That's always a good way to start. Way to go, Ian. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda? Motion made by Ron. Wait a second.
Second.
Second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution for closing meeting for negotiation strategy. Motion. Well, I like you, Michael. Second. Thank you. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment? Thank you. Consent items. We have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Just enthusiastic this evening, are we? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Discussion items. Annual organizational meeting.
In reading up on the annual meeting, as you probably know, MSBA has the first Monday in January handout, and it said that our meeting needs to take place on the first Monday in January or as soon thereafter as possible. Well, the first Monday in January is January 1st, so it can't take place that day. Typically, the board has had it on the organizational meeting on just a regularly scheduled board meeting day. So for this, it would be on Thursday, January 4th. Is that soon enough for statute language that says as soon as practical?
Makes sense to me. It's practical because we're here.
Okay.
I think the only
Change it.
situation would be if there was some emergency that would happen on the 2nd or 3rd. We don't have an organized board to meet and deal with it.
Right.
But I mean,
in our favor, the board meets twice a month. For those districts that typically don't meet until the 3rd Monday
that's a
of the
problem.
month,
That's
then
a
this becomes a problem, and they have to meet on that as
Earlier.
soon as possible and have a special meeting, where we don't really have that same type of push.
No, and I think the organizational meeting is really not supposed to be conducting business. It's just supposed to be organizing.
Organizational, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a special meeting, just get everybody in place. But we've made it a meeting, right?
Yeah.
So we will have business that night too?
We always have.
We always have,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean we have to anymore. It's just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we have to continue, but if doing it that way works for us, then there's no reason to change it either. So that's why I'm.
Tom, do you think we should have a motion to set the meeting, since we will not have organized, but we are organized now? We should probably have it in the minutes that the meeting is.
Well, so it can be, since it's on discussion now, it can be old business on the 21st.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can make a motion at that time to lock it in.
Right, but it's one of those where discuss the fact that you guys can set it whenever you really feel it needs to work best for you, as long as it's soon after January 1st.
Nobody has any problem on that, right? Okay.
And I know, speaking for Josh, I asked him before, and he said even next year Thursdays are going to be basically the day that works for him for meetings.
Okay. Board committee charters.
Okay, these are all just, policy is not a draft because that was approved by the board, and the only other one that really has had partial board approval is the online schools their purpose statement, I took from a prior board meeting where that was approved. The rest are just in draft form. And so, there's the online. Now, membership, the work statements, the meeting schedule, that's all in draft form. But that's why I've got board approved on the purpose. But as you're looking through those, in talking to Tom about these, he said that we should probably, when we are meeting and that organizational meeting, that's when these get approved as well.
Or if you know, we can look at them, once we get set up in our groups again, look them over. If anybody has any changes, we can kind of, because everybody asks, what am I gonna do in that meeting? With that group, if I belong to finance or negotiations or facility, what do they do? That type of questions come up. So I think if we look them over between now and then, we could probably approve them at that time. Unless somebody has would rather not.
Well,
There's only
is
a
it,
few that need to be done.
so I would think that each group develops their charter.
Right.
I mean, at the direction of the board, the policy one needs to be updated because our major task is completed, so we need to revise.
Okay.
That one, I mean, review the school district policy manual was our first work statement. That's what we did in 2012. So we need to update the work statements, roles and responsibilities for the current, because we knocked some of those off. So the policy committee needs to reestablish some of those. That's the one charter I'm aware of. But I have some questions on some of the draft language in the others.
Sure.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
I don't know if it's, and I'm not on those, so I don't know if it's appropriate for me to raise those and when those should be raised or when those.
Well, I would
where
like, we have
those-
questions on them now, let's bring them up and, we can discuss them between now and then. Again, I just threw that date out because that's kind of when everything starts falling into place.
Okay,
Mike Crin and I just talked about in the other, if there's changes to be made, then they have to go back to the board. So I'd rather have them, make sure that everybody's on the same page and clear understanding of them before we finalize them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do have some suggestions.
well, we haven't historically, as a board, made a motion, a second, and voted on the charter. We have agreed to the committees
Mhm.
and chosen the membership,
Right.
right? But are we saying that the
We've
board?
never really,
We never.
other than the policy charter, and did the board approve that policy charter?
I don't, we just did that, we presented that to the board saying, this is what we propose we're going to
Mhm.
aim to do. And I just
Did
think
the
it was,
board
it was,
approve it?
no, it was just,
Oh.
I mean, I believe it was, I think it was just discussion, it was just communication, but, possibly the board should approve those charters, that's one question.
Well, like the facilities one, now that's just new, that's,
Yeah, there was, in looking back through old, board meetings, board minutes, I couldn't find anything
I don't think. we
talking
ever had.
about
No, never have.
what the purpose of it or what the responsibilities, and nor could I find anything on negotiations other than they negotiate. And so I could find updates from the committees, but I never could find, with policy, I could find that charter that was brought, and then with online, that there were 3 committees that were board approved as far as the mission, but the other 2 were ad hoc.
so
Those were
these
transition
drafts, where did
committees.
they come from?
What?
Did you write these?
Yeah.
Did you get some guidelines from someplace?
I did research and Gwen looked them over, so it was the 3 of us. We looked at other schools, if they had it. In some cases, other schools had nothing.
Most other schools have nothing,
well,
from
yes.
my research.
Nonprofits
Have a lot of them.
nonprofits have a lot of them. And so in looking at different nonprofits, that's where we were putting things together and said, okay, this is kind of what we're doing. And so that's where we came up with some of the language. And in some cases, it's, okay, what are the things this committee has done, and adding to the list. In some cases, we saw the list that was there and said, oh, we don't have this, so there's no sense to put anything on about a swimming pool. So we take that off.
So that's why we want everybody to look at them to see if there's things that we need to adjust and change.
Okay,
Well,
so
I just had a question about that, number 8 on responsibilities here,
Number
which
8 on
one?
responsibilities, on which one?
on the facilities.
What about it?
Oh, the committee has the authority to approve expenditures up to 10,000?
Yeah, if I have a problem, I have a question about that one as well.
Is that something that we've ever done?
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
we've actually had, I think at one time we talked about it at the board meeting and asked the board, what would you allow us to not have to keep coming back for? You know, am I saying that right, Gary?
I think so, yeah.
It was a while ago, and we talked about it, and you guys said, yeah, let's just do that number. Because I think at one time it was higher than that, years ago. But I mean, it's up to the board, obviously.
Yeah. I just.
That's why
remembered
that's
it
on there,
all,
is
that's
that's-
why I'm asking.
Yeah, it was
Well-
a discussion we had, I don't know when it was. You remember, Gary? I bet it's 6 years, maybe, or more.
It's a while.
And we said, okay, what would be the value that we don't have to keep coming in? You know, if we spend $300, do we need to come in and say, yeah, you gotta okay that? You're like, no. And then we came up with that number. It seemed like somewhere along the
So is
line.
that 10,000 total
Yeah.
for a year?
No,
Or
that's
is
for
that for one time?
For
a project.
So you could, if we had 10 projects, you could conceivably approve $100,000.
But we don't
worth
ever
of
actually
stuff.
go to that point, Ron. But yeah, these are the way it's written, yeah. I don't think we've ever, like,
I'm just
Throwing that
asking,
out there.
well, I mean, the board has to approve it, so.
Yeah.
I kinda know what I'm approving.
no, and again, the number came up years ago. Seems, I don't even remember what it was before that. You'd have to dig into it.
40,000 before that.
Yeah.
And we thought 40,000 was too much.
Right.
And so the 40,000 came down to, the 10,000, it came down to 10,000 while I was superintendent. The 40,000 was before I got to be super.
At what point does it need to go out for bid? What's the threshold?
I think it's
25.
100,000.
Oh, we don't have to take, if we had a $30,000 project, we wouldn't have to get multiple bids on it.
have 2 quotes, but not
What's the level for 2 quotes?
The 30.
25.
25,000?
Well, my concern with this is that all of these committees are advisory. They cannot act on behalf of the full board. Anything that they do, they don't have the authority to act. So I think statement number 8 needs to be stated differently. Because I understand the
Okay.
intent, but we cannot give, as a full board, give less than a quorum of the board the right to make those kind of decisions. Now, if this is money within the budget for facilities,
That's what it is.
Yeah.
like
well,
what I
but
was
then
gonna say.
state it differently.
Okay.
You know
Well,
what
that's
I'm
what
saying?
yeah.
I'm
It wouldn't be,
saying
it wouldn't
it's-
be
I was
money.
always under the impression
I
that it was
understand
in-
that, but the verbiage there is.
Okay,
Right.
yep,
Is-
right,
Now that
okay.
you say that, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was always intended, was that if there was money in the budget for like capital or repairs or things like that, and then they approved what it actually was being spent on.
Then my assumption would be when the facilities committee meets to make those discussions, that information is communicated to the full board. But it doesn't have to come to the full board for a vote, but there's a time for questions if there are
Oh, yeah,
questions on it,
yeah.
right?
We've always done it that way, where anything that we spend any money on, we always bring it up. If it otherwise goes through finance, and, you know, there's,
Okay, I will work on the wording, so, because right now what I'm writing is overly wordy.
a lot of it in the past would have been like, say if we've already approved saying we're gonna build something, whatever, or do something. If it meets under that requirement, then we're in our meeting and we just keep it rolling that way.
So if we
It's
use the
nothing
term
new.
allocate instead of approve,
Well, it says the authority to approve, and the committee,
prior approved money or something. That's
Yeah,
going
previously.
Previously.
Previously
I don't know.
approved, yeah.
Less is more on these
Yeah.
committee charters,
Yep.
I think. I mean, and,
Well-
and then, you know, in the purpose statements, I think they all need to state clearly that the committee is serving an advisory function to the board, not making the decision on behalf of the board. That's actually in our school board policy review, or school board committee policy 213,
Okay,
so.
Well, that's kind of what it's saying, it's concern, it's not saying they have authority to do stuff.
I'm trying to avoid the future where something was presented and the board had questions and it got turned down, and it was very frustrating to the facilities committee as well as to the full board. So I don't know whether the committee felt that they had the authority to make those decisions and that it was approved or what. So to clearly say we're just advisory and the board has a right to question that and turn it down, that's gotta be understood by the committee as well as the board. And so if we're saying it's concerned with it, yeah, that's fine, as long as the public understands it's an advisory capacity as well.
Can you just put advisory in front of the committee there, this advisory committee?
That sounds good.
and I'll look at policy 213 to match.
So it
make
matches
sure
up
it
verbiage?
matches the policy language.
Well, look through them to see, because if people that are on the committees now, we may have some more, you know, people that aren't on it even. So everybody has a clear understanding of each policy, each committee's responsibilities.
So should we,
We can go through each one.
well, I don't know if we want to spend the time to go through each one, or if we should, if we're not gonna approve these until the
No, we're not
organizational
gonna.
meeting, to whom shall we direct
The,
our questions about? To you, because they were,
Yep.
okay, and then who makes the decision on whether they're changed within the committee? Does that information then go to the respective committee?
As soon as I get a comment from a board member on potential changes to language, I will send those potential changes to those people who are on the committee right now.
Okay,
So we'll go through these at the next board meeting?
And I can, if we get changes in
Yeah.
before that.
look them over, we have changes, get them to Corinne, then we can review them at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
So if you get
And
the
again, if
changes to
it's-
me
it
by
gets
the
to be where it's
18th of
too-
December, I can get them in the board packet for the 21st.
Yeah.
And I can send them out to the, well, yeah, because committees would need to look at them and weigh in.
well, the charter language, does it have to be in place before the next year? I
Well,
mean,
no, we haven't had it in place at all, but,
No, it's not locked in stone.
but it would,
There's
it would, if
There
there's
we go.
time, but it would be nice to have those people who have
Even if we don't
served on those
approve them,
committees the
if we have a
longest.
draft measurement, at least the people that are on those committees have some understanding of what they're gonna be doing. Even if they're not approved, at least they're rough drafts on, you know, for Josh, you know, if there's a question.
And it just, the reason we're doing it now instead of waiting, it would be nice for those people that are serving on the committee that really know how that committee functions. to
No,
weigh in.
I'm glad that you took the initiative to look into this. I think that a lot of public schools don't do it, but I don't think that's a reason not to do it. I think it's a good practice.
No, in our search, there's majority of schools.
Well, we can be a leader, right? We're leading and learning, so
Yes.
let's do it.
Okay,
Okay, any other questions on that? Old business, items for discussion and approval, superintendent's performance evaluation. finally come to this part, and that's, you got pre-evaluation. This is the one we just did last time. As far as overall rating for the superintendent, the overall rating is 3.53. You guys saw that, we discussed it last time. Does anybody have any specific questions?
Is there any, the goal statements and the professional development goal, were those ever, I mean, should those be listed so that somebody looking at this overall rating knows, or is that really not part of, is that personal, private, not relevant?
We haven't made it relevant in the past. I think
I'd
it's
have
kind
to
of
look
up
back
you.
in the minutes whether we had, I felt like we had
The goal statements?
I can't remember. That's
We've
what,
done it both ways.
we've done it both ways.
And it,
That was my only question.
So we could put out the goal statements and then the overall score.
Yeah, but I re-looked at the goal statements. Some of them are long and, you know, they just, I'm not sure that they, yeah, that was my question. Some of them's long, somebody's gonna look at that and go, oh my goodness, that's.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want
That's
to
a
try
big-
to
that's a big
Doesn't
goal.
MSBA just recommend that they report the
overall score.
overall?
Yeah. And I think if we had them all written down, people would be like, not very, maybe confused.
Well, I don't think, I mean, I think the first goal was on the UNESCO project. I think people would like to know that that was something that we were working with you on, and that was one of the goals. It falls into this, it's one of the things that in this last round of evaluation was one of the reasons that the rating was, you know, between accomplished and distinguished. So, you know, UNESCO's not gonna be on there every year, building project, hopefully
No.
not.
I don't think so. Well, I don't know how we did in the past, if we've asked the board if that's what they wanna do, or it's, I mean, it's Corinne's evaluation.
Well, I think it's
so
Corinne's
It's
decision,
your decision
unless it's, you know.
on it, on what you wanna do. So,
and if you
and I think
want,
that's why we've done it both different ways. So,
and I'm fine with having the goals from last year printed with it, that's fine.
Well, let me restate that, maybe just putting a number out there, there needs to be a statement that goes with it. The board in evaluation of the superintendent has given, I mean, just that number doesn't say
anything,
anything.
no.
I mean, just even a statement, even if it's not gonna be the goal statements, and say this is
It does seem
superintendent
like
job
in the past we
evaluation.
did have a statement.
There should be just a statement, job performance evaluation. Here's the number on a scale. Seems a little more than a random number.
I'm listening, yeah.
And who would write the statement?
Well, the board should, or it should, I mean, it should be
A
everyone should
joint
be
statement
comfortable with
saying
it.
that we appreciate working with the superintendent, she's done an outstanding job, you know, or the overall performance. These are some of the highlights. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, it doesn't even have to be that much, it just needs to be
More than
more
number?
than a number.
Well, do you wanna just restate it so we can vote on it? Don't we have to do that as soon as possible after the?
This isn't a vote, we're just presenting.
We just
what
we have to
No, we
present it.
don't have to.
Yeah,
No. It's just a presentation of it.
well, I don't know, I'm stirring the pot today, I haven't, we haven't been here for 2 or 3 weeks, so. Mimi, what do you think? Should there be a statement with it, or doesn't it really matter to you? Doesn't matter?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't want it to be a huge effort to write the statement. I mean, you know
We
what I
can
mean?
just put the number.
Almost seems like Pandora's box in the wording, but
Yeah, it does.
I'm not
I
a
agree.
writer.
Are you
So-
talking about something like the board has held a annual evaluation for the superintendent and reported an overall rating 3.53 out of 4.
That sounds great, Ron.
Perfect,
Did you
Ron.
get that down?
You know, I think one of the things, if you don't mind
You
my
get it written
interrupting.
down, man?
In the past, the superintendent evaluation was done and closed, and then the meeting reopened and the score was announced that way. And there were those preemptive statements that I recorded and typed into notes. So I will record and type that, what Ron just said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
It seems like in the past, when they did some on superintendents, I can recall for Broadwaters, and they put each question in there, and they put what the board ranked on those, and there was a lot of confusion in the community.
Yeah, no,
We
we just
heard
want
a
it
lot of
overall.
that, and I don't think we need that.
No.
Well, I think the MSBA recommends only an overall.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. That's their thought process.
So, there you go.
Okay. Nothing else on that, let's move right along. New business, items for discussion and approval, acceptance and oath of office. We got a new guy?
Where?
So. Corinne, you gonna stand up,
Oh,
have him raise his right hand? There you go. How are you gonna do it this time?
That's, stand up and. Okay,
Are you ready?
sure.
Are you gonna go up front or?
Yeah.
Here, I'm just gonna move out of the way.
Maybe in the middle of us, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
I hereby accept the office of the school board member of Independent School District number 294 for a term beginning the Thursday, December 7th, and expiring the first Monday in January 2019.
oh, very good.
Yeah. Oath of office in the bottom. Nice.
Yep, and then you need to do.
Gwen's gotta stamp it.
Right here.
Yeah. Plenty of
And
space.
then you could read
Plenty of
this.
space.
You want me to read that?
Yes.
I gotta hold my hand up.
Yeah.
I swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of the school board member of Independent School District number 294 to the best of my judgment and ability.
Thank you. Okay, and so once again, we need your signature. Did you get my email?
Yeah, on the next one, or which one?
It's on,
Thank you.
it's not on.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
you
I
notarize
figured
it,
that's the
thank
case,
you.
so that we did wanna.
She's got the forward.
She's got her stamp.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you and welcome.
Welcome to the team.
Welcome.
Okay. Someone complete. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, policies for first reading. Anything you wanna highlight on those, Michaeline or Ron? There's no-
There were no changes on policy 201. On policy 202, we have a resolution amended to that policy that combines the offices of clerk and treasurer into one. There it is. And I know that we have passed that once and it can stand, but I think we made an agreement to reauthorize that at every organizational meeting. So that was the only thing I wanted to highlight there, that resolution needs to be included at the organizational meeting to combine those offices. Or to make that suggestion.
Yeah.
The other one I had, so consent agendas, the policy there for consent agendas, we can put approval of the agenda on the consent agenda. It specifically states it in there as one of the things that is appropriate for it's under,
Let's see. Oh, no.
no, it's B, I think it's in B.
B is consent items.
In the middle of the paragraph.
Approval of the agenda.
We have minutes on there, we have the bills, and we have the contracts. We have the right to pull anything off the consent agenda to act on it separately. So I was just gonna suggest, Mr. Chair, that you could put the agenda approval, you could slide that into consent agendas in the future.
Oh, I see, yeah, great.
And then reorder.
Thanks for pointing that out, Michael.
You're welcome.
Anything else you want to point out?
Well, just school board committees, policy 213, which lays out the work of the committees. I would urge us all to read that as we're thinking about crafting these committees or drafting them. So these will be approved next time, so we should take a look at them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, concerns at this time? Okay, we're gonna keep moving, and then we'll come back. Because we decided that was gonna have the truth and taxation was at 7, correct?
Yep.
So. Announcements, fun events.
It's just the upcoming concerts.
That time of year.
Yep, so December 14th at the elementary, that's K4. High school band and choir is the 18th. Elementary, 5-6 choir and band is the 21st,
Which is a school board meeting.
which is a school board meeting night.
So are we gonna try to keep that one short?
Short, yes.
Because I think it starts at 6:30.
The concert does?
Won't be for sure, but
Is the auditor coming for sure on the 21st?
That is the last I'm sure.
Okay. And Todd is doing a short presentation on the continuous math program.
yeah, 6:30.
Well, if the auditor's coming, maybe you should have Todd in January.
Okay. We'll double check on, so it'll either be the auditor or Todd.
You think?
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense. January 11th and 12th for the MSBA. Need to find out who's going for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, for sure.
And I've made reservations for the ladies. Are the men staying at the base?
Who's all going? Ronnie, you gonna go? Dean, you gonna go?
James
If I
going
go,
early.
I'll have to go on the 9th probably, because that's when phase 1 training is that evening,
Right.
from 7 till 9. So I'd go up that day, probably.
Okay, and then you do phase 2 the whole day on January 10th,
Yeah,
and then you'll just stay for the 11th and 12th too?
yeah.
And then
But
we
I'd
go-
probably
we go
stay
up
at the
there.
Hilton then too, or something, because that's right where it is. and
Yeah,
So I don't
right,
have
so
to-
stay
What
downtown.
do you,
I'll see what I can
We
do,
go
that
there,
window
yeah.
closed.
That's, no,
But-
tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning?
Did we go
Or
up
the
early Thursday? Is that the way we've been doing it?
Yeah,
We're
we're
even
going
doing
up Wednesday night instead of
They've
early
been going, they're
Thursday.
going up early because they don't wanna get up road dark 30, but we've gone up first thing in the morning and stopped at breakfast. But I'm just wondering with him.
Well, he'll be up.
Right.
I'm going up Thursday morning,
You're
but I'm
going
not
Thursday.
getting up early just to stop and eat breakfast.
Okay.
Are you saying you're going out?
It's early enough,
You're
the way
going
it
out
is.
yourself, is that what you're
If you
saying?
guys are stopping for breakfast, yeah, I'll drive up myself, otherwise I might ride with you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, we could bring breakfast with us.
That's traditions, man. Changes. Gary, you going? Well, we just gotta find out if you're gonna stay
Yeah.
Thursday night. Are you gonna stay at the hotel the whole time?
I'll check.
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna take care of that for
I
you?
will do that, and you'll take care of
Yep,
you
I
two
guess, right?
troublemakers. I mean,
Probably safer that way.
Tuesday night, I know the session gets over at after 9 or something, so it'd be kind of late to.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, anything else?
And just a legislator breakfast forum is on Saturday, February 10th.
I didn't think somebody wanted to go to that, didn't?
It would be good to have people go.
Right.
Yeah, I will, when is you have to put your reservations in for that, for,
That doesn't come in until January.
okay.
Okay, but right now, the state is forecast to be 188 million in deficit.
To the good?
No.
Deficit.
The-
And so I think it will be very telling to see what the legislators have to say,
We don't know
because
who's
they
gonna be
went
there,
from,
do we?
no, I don't know if Greg Davids is going to be there, but I do know that
Never is.
they went from almost $1 billion surplus to 188 in the hole.
Yeah, how does
How does that happen?
That,
What did Dayton buy?
that
New house?
it was more tax cuts than, so if you increase spending and you reduce your income, you're going to end up in a deficit.
That's in Rochester, to southeast Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right.
Southeast Service Co-op.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Association of School Administrators spearheads it. And there's a committee that plans it and they do a nice job, I think.
So between now and then, if you have questions you want anybody to bring up to them, we should probably work them together.
Yep.
Anything else?
Thank you to Kyle Kaler. You'll notice that when you came in, the entry, there are the vinyl letters on the doors instead of the piece of paper that was taped to the window. He, through a Perkins grant, has the die cutter for the vinyl. And so he did those letters and he'll do the letters on the rest of the doors. So we don't have to have paper signs taped up anymore. And you'll notice when you came in, we've got the signboard on the side of the building, of the entryway. So we don't have to put meeting notices taped in the windows anymore. So everything just looks a little more professional and clean.
Tell them thanks. Appreciate it.
And then future agenda items. MSBA sent a potential resolution for boards to see whether or not the board, and this is, do you want that resolution on the next board agenda? The resolution requesting that legislators, we can either send the resolution to the state legislators or to our federal legislators to close the cross-subsidy gap that exists with special education. Because right now, special education is turning into an unfunded mandate. So it's, would you want that on an agenda on the 21st?
You know, my question to you was, how does that serve our budget planning? Because it seemed to me, the way I read it, a good idea to send a message from school boards to both the state. There were two separate resolutions. One is drafted for the state level, one is for the federal level, because a lot of our special ed funding comes through some of it comes through HVED federally, right? Some of it's
Yes.
federal and some of it's state, so we need to make the case at both levels for special ed funding. So I felt it seemed like an appropriate thing to do, but not if it's not. But that's why I'm looking to you.
Right.
Well,
Probably appropriate. Will it make a difference? I can't say that they're going to look at all these resolutions and change anything with what they're doing. But at least it would be the board's attempt at trying to make a change. So that's.
I think if it doesn't hurt anything, why not? You know,
I think we should go on the
I mean,
record
yeah,
as
I was gonna
supporting
say,
that
why
special
we-
ed funding is
We've talked about
a
it.
big and growing concern for our district. And,
Well, we just talked about it here recently,
Yeah.
you know, we talked budget money,
yeah,
so, you're right. So that's on the 21st? Okay.
So I will have both resolutions.
Unless somebody else, anybody else have any comments, concerns on that? So we have meeting and committee updates. Corinne, we only had the one facility. Gary, you wanna go over that?
Well, we talked a lot about the signage and looked at drawings, pictures of the proposed signage. It's getting very close. There were some minor adjustments that were requested, and those will be done and then brought back for further review.
what kind of requests were being,
Well,
cause I
for
looked
example-
at you had, there were drafts, so what
Yes.
was being suggested?
The font above, in the sign above the elementary school, making the Houston a little smaller, making the lettering below it a little larger,
Okay,
little things like that.
yeah, I'm just curious.
Well, and it's, there are letters already on that building, so we asked if the lettering on that sign could maybe match the same font.
Oh,
That's
that
on-
kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
so it's, because we've got Art Deco lettering
Yeah.
already there, and the sign is going to be on that door right by that
Yeah,
lettering.
okay.
So it made sense to have that be consistent.
okay.
And then put
And,
another sign over the
Main
preschool.
entrance. Well, that was, yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
preschool.
preschool building,
At
that's
the
not the main
preschool.
entrance.
have a main
Oh.
entrance sign over the door that people walk in instead of, because where the sign is shown
It's up on this,
Right,
is up
yeah,
on,
and people usually go in.
right.
That was a
People-
question
yeah.
I had looking at those pictures.
Right.
So we're gonna have them do another sign for that, just a small main entrance.
So there'd be one over both,
Correct.
okay.
and then,
Are the colors changed on that one?
It's more the golden and
Yeah,
brown
it's a
to
different
match the
color,
building,
it's gonna
right?
match the building.
right, and
It looks
instead of,
like golden gophers.
he did burgundy, and we asked him to do a dark brown instead of burgundy. So it matches the, metal
The trim.
flashing on the windows.
There's some flashing on there.
I don't know, I just think our colors are red and white and black and.
Well,
I
he
think that would look
tried it,
nice on
but he
a
said it
building.
wouldn't look good on a building. He
Yeah.
tried red on all the buildings as he put it together, but it just kind
And
of
black
looks like.
wouldn't look good, just black and white would look better than golden
No, because
gophers.
it's a tannish building.
Yeah,
Although there was some people there who thought it looked good as a Golden Gophers, but.
Well, it's just not our school
Yeah.
colors. I mean, it doesn't look like our school. I understand fitting in with the building.
Yeah,
So he's gonna tweak the colors a little bit, do some
Mhm.
changes, just to bring them back.
The other thing, when I looked at that picture, do we have the steps listed in facility, in the long-term facility maintenance?
For
There?
redo 'em?
Yeah,
I haven't looked at them lately, are they
well, then the
shot?
pictures,
they look pretty crumbly.
I was like, oh my goodness,
yeah, that's,
bad. I mean, if we're
Well, we'd add 'em
saying
to
we
the
got,
list.
yeah,
On which one, now, are you
the
talking-
preschool,
Preschool
those
building.
tall steps there, they're crumbling.
What about the gym?
Rick talked to me about that today as well, that, before last year's veterans, we got somebody to come in and do a skim coat to make sure that the concrete that was there was not, a tripping hazard. And so far, the skim coat is holding, but we are going to,
We
it
should,
is,
Semi-hole.
We should add it on our list so,
Yep.
so we know, because we
Yep.
talked about having that money for repairs, and
Right.
those are exactly what we asked Todd and Rick
Right.
to put on there.
And he's,
And if they're not on there, we'll make sure they're on there too, cause now would be the time to do
Yeah.
it, since we will have some funds for smaller projects.
I don't know if it's possible, but is there any way to make that handicapped accessible?
At the gym entrance?
Yeah.
the elementary gym,
I was
Unless
just
you
gonna
ramp it.
suggest
You'd have
that
to
the
ramp it.
preschool, I'm not an expert in it either, but those stairs scare me. You know,
Yeah.
kids are always going up and down. Is there, you know, if we're
Yeah.
fixing them, if we're using long-term facility, can we turn them or put a railing in them? I don't know what would be the best, but they're very, I don't know if they're steeper than normal
I
stairs.
think they're higher stairs.
They're probably
than
different
normal.
code back, cause their code has probably changed since they were built.
Yeah,
So-
I agree, though, we should look at it.
But we can take a look at them, put them on the list,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we
Actually,
ideas. And we can
that's
ask
for the
about
steps, I
the,
can call
the ramp.
Chris from UNESCO, and, cause that's something that UNESCO looks into for us, and have him look into both code and how we can repair them so that they are safe, without,
and see what,
totally changing the look of the building too.
and see on a ramp, I don't know how it, I mean, it has to be a certain degree, but I don't know how far we have to go.
The
But I mean, it doesn't
preschool,
hurt.
but the
Not the
elementary,
preschool,
the
but
elementary
the
school, there
elementary.
might be a way to ramp that,
Yeah, just to see,
maybe.
never hurts to ask.
Mhm.
As long as he's gonna look into stuff, you might as well put a few more things on.
I think for the elementary to get the ramp, you'd almost have to have the ramp starting.
In the
Out
corner,
at the
Over,
street,
yeah,
yeah, but it's possible because there's
Over the
room there.
side,
right?
towards the tree to the right. But that's not that high up, on
Right.
the top of that step, you
Go
know,
almost to
a
the alley.
degree. Huh?
Ramp would go almost to the alley if you went to one way.
Well, yeah, but the other way you have to,
Other way you'd be way out front.
right? See what it says.
That's, I can definitely ask him and see what he says.
And then the only other thing, Gary, was the,
Wait, one other thing on the signs, did you, the directional sign, move that down to the teardrop, right?
Right,
That's way better.
yeah,
That's way better than the way it was presented the last time I saw it, so
and it's
thank
gonna
you
be
for
a
that.
4x or 5x, something.
4x5.
4x5, so it's pretty good
That makes
size.
sense to
yeah,
me.
so it's a good sign, and, it's going to be more visible, because people tend to come down that street, and then they can see the arrows right away, and that's why we wanted to do the canopy off the front of the building, because when somebody sees the arrow, main entrance, and then looks, there's absolutely nothing to show where it is. And so with the canopy, main entrance, oh, there you go.
So how are we doing on the budget?
Well, he's running the numbers for us, that was one of the questions. Because the material he's utilizing, it's gonna be, when we originally started, he said it's gonna be cheaper than what we were even planning for the other signs. That's why we were looking at cutting the signs down by doing it in 2 phases. But we talked about mounting and different things today, so he's gonna get together some numbers. I think the canopy was the one thing he's not making, he outsources that.
The
Right,
frame for
the
it,
frame for it, so,
Company called Rifle.
yeah, he's gonna get us the information,
but he didn't wanna start doing numbers until we were closer on.
yeah, our final. So, but we're cheaper than what we originally were talking about, which was what, like 6?
I'm not sure.
But I'm not sure.
I'm not sure at all, because he
Shouldn't say
hasn't
anything until we get the number right.
Yeah.
That's the safest, yeah.
Okay. And then
But
It
the
was
he-
about 6.
He-
Yeah.
But he did say that having the signs, attached to the building for the elementary and the preschool is much more cost effective than the freestanding.
Okay,
Because with the freestanding, you need to do cement work, you need to have footings, you need, and so he said this is going to be more cost, and the thing he brought up today when he found out that we do have the, vinyl cutter, he said, you know, since the letters above the gym that say Home of the Hurricanes and the letters that would be on the canopy are vinyl cuts, he said, would you like me to work with your kids and we could have the kids do the letters, and we thought that was.
Cause then we would buy the vinyl, it'd be cheaper.
Yeah, that
So-
sounds great.
So,
Are you guys also looking at lighting too? It'd be nice to have these signs lit well,
Yeah, that's one of the things he had mentioned for lighting, so.
whether it be on the ground or above it and down, but we have
So-
nice new signs that show them off.
Yeah.
One other thing, as long as we have money to spare on this project. What about if there was, is there any way to put a standing directional sign at the elementary school that directs people towards the high school? Maybe not the major sign at the teardrop that says where everything is, but as Mimi's pointed out, people at the elementary school can't find the high school.
Well, it could be an I thought, because we do have, we may have extra material. And we were discussing, because when we buy these sheets, they come in 4x8 for whatever the
And you're
size
stuck
is.
with it and you buy the whole
Right,
sheet.
you buy the whole sheet, and so we may be stuck with some
So
pieces.
maybe you could have
So we can maybe have them do a sign that says,
Yeah.
we can bring it up to him, email him when we, cause he's gonna email you you or Todd some stuff, right?
I think he's emailing Crystal, because
Yeah.
the kids, we had more, Honor Society kids there today, and gave their opinions on the signs.
Cause it's kind of their project.
Mhm.
that They brought it up, so. Anyway, good idea though.
And we
Anything else on that?
talked about that before,
Oh.
because we wondered how to show the arrows in a way that
works.
that works,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I like the colors that he or you guys have approved, and I mean, I like it better than what's been approved before, and if it would also tie them together, if you had a directional sign here to this group of buildings and a directional sign from the other one, kind of tie them together from both ends.
And we can talk to him about it, like I said, we just said it, when we have some extra material, we should think of uses.
Yep.
Right.
So, good thoughts.
The other thing we talked about was the garage project, and Corinne mentioned that we will need a couple feet of fill to raise the base. And we still need to have the lines drawn as to where the DNR wetlands line is.
Because we can't build in, and so to build it there, we will need a variance, because we're gonna have to build it closer than the 30-foot setback from the curb.
So when
Because
can they do those lines, or is that requested?
Randy's gonna do them.
Randy's going to, I've got the measurements from Chris Peterson, and he just has to dig the softball measurer out of the shed, or the bus barn, where he's got it socked away, because everything is kind of crammed together.
Once he gets that, he's gonna kind of mark it, give us an idea what, see what we need to do. So it's still,
Put flags in the ground, so we'll see exactly where the demarcation line is, where we can't go behind.
main thing is, it's,
So we need to build closer to the street then.
yeah,
So can we take the curb out and have direct entrance into them?
That's doable. It's just, we can't encroach on or build in that wetland area at all. And for the Army Corps of Engineers, we just need to make sure that it's up
Above the
about
shed.
2 feet, so it's
Level.
not in flood zone.
Gotcha. Do we have to substitute anything anyplace else?
If, that's why we need to mark it out and see exactly where the lines are, to see if we've got enough room and what kind of variance we'll need to ask for.
so before we go any farther, we just, hold on, I know we're still working the project. Before we go any farther, we have to get the lines drawn, kind of go from there.
But Planning Commission for the city does know that there is the potential for a variance coming before them in January.
Ready, Jerry?
I think so.
Any other questions on any of those? Okay. So, we have a few minutes yet before we go back to the to adjourn for the truth and taxation meeting.
If anybody
So we
needs a
could,
break.
I was gonna say,
Break.
no, it should be, take a 5-minute break, and then, should we adjourn and then go 5-minute break and come back and do the truth and
And then
taxation?
convene.
Convene?
Sure, it's up to you.
Nobody can
Motion
do it.
to,
What have we got left? Just
Just-
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Can't
Do we-
just stand here?
what is it, instead of adjourning, don't we like
Recess.
suspend or we,
How about twiddling?
I can't think of what it is if you.
Thought of it before you said it.
Yeah, we did it once before, didn't we?
Mhm.
Yes, we did.
Suspend, is that what it was?
Recess? No, it's
Yeah, maybe it's a recess.
recess.
It's a recess.
Recess, okay.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, back here by 7, so we can discuss everything. So you want Steve? Oh, sorry. That wasn't intended to be. Other than that,
So Gene, when you get into your surface, you're gonna get to this exact same area.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, then you'll be able to see all the signs that they were discussing and everything, so that landing page, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's a, they have openings.
it's fresh.
It's fresh.
yeah, I'll try to get you where the girls are, so it's, you know, you have
Yeah.
that.
There's a Hilton there, there's a Hilton there.
That's true. isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
yeah, we'll get that,
Yeah.
I'll make a reminder to do that right away in the morning. Yeah.
you going to Arizona?
Yeah.
Are you? I figured, I could just see that you were getting lost.
And then do I need to register for the phase one review?
I will do that because that one has, those have fees.
Yeah.
And so
phase
then,
two,
yeah.
next day.
But the conference or MSBA sessions itself, that's free,
Yeah.
but I'll make sure you're in on that.
Yeah.
And that everybody knows about you.
Okay.
Oh,
Gene, you can't hide.
I sure could try.
sounds like a plan.
Well, how's everything on the south side of the hill?
Well, it's
The
kind of
north side,
cold.
north side.
North side, it's kind
I'm
of
on the
cold
north
right
side of the
now.
hill. Wires, we get a tunnel comes right up to us. Well, it's just like it's going up a tunnel.
Yeah, well, the west wind hits us hard, or east. I mean,
So ours comes out right through there, you know, in the whole field, right around that bank. And I have stuff.
it's better today than it was
Oh,
yesterday.
yes. Yeah, this wind is coming the other direction today.
Yeah. I did.
Is this where we can complain about taxes?
Yeah, this is it, yeah.
Okay, I'm on the way, please.
Yeah, mine is too, don't apologize.
Sister Act.
Oh, fun,
It was really, you know, it's a musical, so it's not like it would be gold, but
yeah.
Was it the same one the kids did in Houston?
yeah.
A little better, I'm sure.
Well, I don't
The
know,
chain
kids
house.
did okay. But yeah, it was nicely done.
They have another one called, I saw it wasn't at the
all your
chain
work
house, I
done?
saw it somewhere else, but it was nonsense, and that's really good
Oh,
too.
yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I,
It's just like,
You don't have any,
there were
You
5 or
have
6
corn?
nuns, like a comedy show with 5 or 6 nuns and.
have you seen the
oh,
trial?
it's good.
What's up in January?
Yeah. You dry it yourself?
It was confusing at the beginning, but
I drive.
So is this all?
well, I just, you know,
And I have some.
I do, it just, yeah, I mean, it just, it takes a while
Yeah.
history to figure out, because it's this complex story that is unfolding in a completely bizarre way. I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out who was, who was bringing charges and who was defending. I have stuff. But then once I kind of figured out, that's
I see Christensen's on here, put a bunch in, tubes. I would imagine it's because it was getting it out faster than they could dry it.
2 days ago, and
I'm
I
guessing,
told
I
him,
didn't ask.
anyway.
really, it was like, well, he's like, whatever. It's not hot. And I said, I think it's hotter than normal, and I got downstairs, and the door was open outside. I just feel the rush and
They're hard to
our furnace kept up, but it was heating. It was running at overdrive.
Deer can be about too, but critters can be.
I thought we were back to.
No, I said, hey,
I don't know.
I don't know. Don't even open that thing, they'll just, as they keep drying them.
Just saying.
I don't know, cause when I talked to him Monday when it was raining, he said he had 250 acres left yet.
Okay, Corinne, it's 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Bring the meeting, bring the meeting back to order.
okay. So do we have?
So, where is
Where'd she
Ann?
go?
She went to get her,
Or
She's right there.
she went to get her. Oh, there she is. She had to
I was gonna do a
find
puppet show. No. Sorry.
Or your battery's dying?
Yes, sorry about that. Okay, you ready for the,
Yes, ready.
okay.
Yeah. Oh, no, he did. Oh, yeah.
You guys are busy talking.
Oh,
I think that's okay though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Truth in Taxation hearing for taxes payable in 2018. What we're going to be talking about today is what we talk at every Truth in Taxation meeting. We'll have the general background on how taxes are calculated. We'll have some information on the district budget and information on the proposed tax levy for taxes payable. Before we go into public comment, after we look at the proposed taxes, at that point, the board will have some time to discuss in this open meeting as far as the different proposals that the finance committee has looked at. And so the public will then be able to see the kind of the workings of that decision and be able to comment on that. So this gives us the ability to tax for the school system. And this is from the Minnesota Constitution, since our federal constitution and amendments don't really speak to education or to school. It is left up to the powers of the state. And so that's why we look to the Minnesota Constitution, and the Constitution does give us the ability as a state to tax. So these are all the things that the state sets. The state sets the tax revenue formulas. And the state sets the school tax policies. They set the minimum and the maximums that schools can tax. And the state also authorizes schools to tax and request a referendum. That all of our formulas come from the state, and when you look at the multi-page document we get, as the state is looking at those taxes, they use different market values as they're doing it, and it, I wish there was an easy button to explain this, but there's not. Just know that that's what the state is in charge of. And then we've got the different funds that come. General fund, and that's the lion's share. So from the general fund, that's where we have to fund regular instruction, special education, transportation. That's where we've got the custodial, a lot of the buildings and facilities. We also have the food service fund. That's for the lunch and breakfast program. The community service fund, that's community education. Construction fund, that's for revenues and expenditures associated with construction projects. And then the debt service fund, that's repayment of bonds. You've probably seen the debt service fund in the news lately because the neighboring schools that had built buildings had building bonds. And with the legislative action last session, last May, when they passed the Ag to School credit, their debt service fund actually got reduced a bit. Caledonia got, I think, 1.2 million taken off theirs there, so there was some recalculations there. And here's our budget by fund. Looking at the beginning budget, this was approved in June. And there we've got the ending fund balance of the 3.3 million. So general fund, once again, this is just a graphic that shows how much is the general fund. That's and that's the general fund budget by the major sources. So state aid, Minnesota kicks in 90% of that. The property taxes that we're talking about today, that's a 4% sliver. Federal sources, and then other. And then this is what, as a school district, we pay for regular instruction at 67%. So as a school, the majority of what we should do is regular instruction, and that is what we have. Our, if you want to compare, this graph is on the Minnesota Department of Ed. You can find it on their website, and so you can look at other area school districts to see how our expenditures compare with their expenditures. Now, property tax. The county assessor has determined the market value for each parcel. And then the legislator sets the tax capacity. The county auditor then calculates the tax capacity for each parcel. And so you've got the market value and the tax capacity are the two things. So the county auditor basically decides what your property is worth. Legislator sets those formulas for the levy limits. You'll notice on your tax bill this time, one of the levies has sunsetted. The voter approved tax levy sunsetted because the legislator gave us the ability to do board approved levies, and so that board approved levy is taking the place of the voter approved levy. The Minnesota Department of Education calculates the levy limits, and that we talked about at our September meeting for the proposed levy document. And then school board used that information in September to set the proposed levy, and then today we're talking about setting the actual final levy. And then the county auditor, Shar, gives us the breakdown on how much money that will generate. And there's the entire breakdown of how that happens. Highlights. This year, there's corrected payments for the new bonds the district sold 2 years ago. MDE made an error. Long-term facility maintenance was brand new for them, and there were, the very first year out of the gate, not as many schools took advantage of it because not many schools had the entire 10-year robust plan done. And we did, because we had UNESCO here, and so we could jump on it as soon as the funding came available to us. but they were also coming up with new coding and new calculations. And so they realized that they had made an error, and so they corrected that amount. You'll see that on one of the next sheets. The authority, once again, as I talked about before, for the board approved levy up to 300 per pupil unit. And once again, in 2013, the state changed from resident pupil unit, so it's just taxing on the students that live within your district, to your average daily membership. So it's, we get taxed on all of the students that are enrolled to Houston Public Schools. The local optional revenue authority remains at 424. However, our district levies less in this category. We're one of few. There are very few districts that don't levy the max there. In fact, it's every year we have to call the State Department and remind them that we are one of those few that don't levy to the max there. And then the resident pupil count is no longer used. We used average daily membership. The reason we don't levy to the max with the local optional, it has a huge impact on taxes because about 75% of our student population does not live in the community. And so we look at what we would get on just the students that lived in the community and recompute that. So this is all the numbers that go with that. You'll notice in the first column, proposed levy payable 2017, you'll notice the deferred maintenance, LTFM, how many lines down? You'll see the negative 72,000. That's that adjustment from the state on their calculation error on long-term facility maintenance. So that actually is money that went back to the taxpayer. And so with this proposed, the actual levy, the proposed levy payable, that's adjusting it down. That's what we did. So we still have a proposed increase of 23, and that's what we're talking about today as far as how much further can we reduce that down from that 23 levy. Okay, so here are some possible scenarios. Pay 1, pay 18, this is the proposed. If you'll look at the third line down where it says property tax rate, since 2014, we have held at 0.59. So we've had a flat tax rate, and we haven't increased nor have we decreased. So looking at what we're getting, if we hold that property tax rate at that 0.59 again, the change in the property tax rate is probably the one you guys want to look at. That's the fourth line down. Your change in property tax will be 0. So one up from there. Okay. There. The change in your property tax, it would be holding your property tax right at 0. But that would, it wouldn't change what you're getting, but we would end up getting, if you look at the second line down, the 4.17% there. It would generate some extra dollars for us, even though it would hold your taxes flat. In looking at that though, and looking at, as I talked about, the ag to school credit and the fact that there are districts around us that got a benefit from that. We don't have a building project as far as a new construction project, so our taxpayers didn't get a benefit because they hadn't been taxed for a new building. But we also realize that there are districts around us that are having tax decreases. So we were looking at what we could do to possibly decrease taxes. And in making sure we have enough money to operate while still trying to get the taxes as low as we can make the 5.66 work. And that would actually decrease taxes for the first time since 2014, and it would be a 4.1% tax decrease. It would be $24 less on a $100,000 home, which really isn't that much. It would mean for the dollar amount for us about 22,000 less in income coming in than what if we would have had the flat tax. And so at this point, before you ask questions, now it's time for the board for the finance committee to talk about the two scenarios with the board so that the community can see kind of the thought process of what's going on. Just as a reminder, the final property tax rate will be ratified at the December 21st meeting. But it's always the goal for the community to really know what the board is thinking at this meeting. So on the 21st, there aren't any surprises.
You wanna bring it up and discuss it? I mean, we talked about it, if you keep that screen up there, and
I was
the one
gonna
you
say, I
just
can
had.
bring the chart up that we had.
Well, that one you just showed is pretty simple.
Okay,
I'm thinking that's probably like that.
perfect.
In the finance committee, we kind of discussed, 1 and 2 there. Again, Corinne told you it's like $23,000 difference. We talked to Gwen as far as revenues, we'd still be okay. As far as trying to, maintain what our budget is that we put in there, we would still have enough money. If we wanted to take it down to the 5 or 0.566, or we could keep it the same. It's kind of a board decision. But either way, it would work for the school. It's always nice to give if we can lower our taxes, it's always nice to do that. But again, my concerns are always, what is that gonna do for us down the road? If we lower them by 4.1 this year and all of a sudden something changes in the state next year, then we may have to come back and say, okay, now we have to increase them. That's always you don't wanna have to do that, because then you could have people a little upset when they say, okay, instead of having it flat like we've been doing it for the last, 3 years?
No, 2014.
14, 3 years. Lowering it would be good, but I don't want to come back and next year have to, go up 6% to make up the difference. So, I wanted everybody's input on that. Michaeline, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at the spreadsheet, and I think this is simpler, but the spreadsheet, there are other options on there. You weighed other options than just these two.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
just came down to these two for the
We talked to
best
Gwen.
balance.
Correct.
Okay,
Because as Mimi would say at the meeting, what did you say it was, a happy medium or?
Sweet spot.
Sweet spot, yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to, I don't
Oh,
know that there
there.
really was a necessarily, but what's gonna have the, get us the biggest bang for our buck, the least amount of taxes, the most amount of state aid, where are we in that picture?
I feel like at the bottom of this sheet, and there's the comparison of the tax rate, the tax rates in the other neighboring districts, which I know we talked
Oh,
about
yeah,
last time. And wondering why we are at 5.9 when some of the other
Schools are
areas
higher?
are significantly lower.
Well, a lot of them, because.
No,
they
I
have
know, but so
businesses.
I appreciate your efforts to lower that a little. It's not, we don't have it's the industry and
Correct.
other things, right? We don't
Right,
have that,
we
so.
don't have the industry in that.
And how come Spring Groves is so low? Do they?
They have a lot of businesses there.
So it's really based on the business base?
Yeah, a lot of revenue comes from, you know, that.
They don't, they don't have any building funds, which brings it back.
Oh, so they were
Pretty much
able
all
to
they
lower
have is
that
the
portion.
operating-
Yeah,
The operating things, and
Yeah.
so, they've got a couple of industries up there, they've got woodland industries, and they've got, northern engraving,
okay.
they got, nursing home.
And again, you said earlier, they
So I
haven't
think
really
it's
done
just because they
anything.
don't have any of those building ones.
Right,
Yeah, they
okay.
haven't
And they
made
haven't done any,
bonds.
major upgrades.
So in light of that comparison, I kinda like the scenario where we're going from 0.59 down to 0.566.
I mean, La Crescent, as you see, went up quite a bit, from 3.7 to 5. You know, and I
That's their
think,
voter approved.
right, and I think, and Rushford is going up, we'll be underneath them.
And Caledonia did a voter approved referendum as well. However, with the different legislative changes that went through for them, their tax rate could still go down.
Because they did that, what was it, a farm
The ag
Egg to school.
Ag to
to
school.
school thing?
Mhm. And they also got special dispensation on their bonds.
Yeah.
So they,
We don't go into that part. Huh?
they basically got a double benefit.
Yeah, well.
Also,
Right
our,
on.
our fund balance is above the percent that we'd set, so we've got a good fund balance, so we're confident that in doing the cut, we'll still have enough money. And I also think for when we can get together and decide if we are gonna do a big project and kind of get our ducks in the row and just wait for the right time, we do have some money there to start to fund it. So we can't pay cash for everything, but we've got a good chunk of money, so if we decide to do an addition or we decide to do something, we've got some money there that we can apply, along with hopefully there'll be some great opportunity with some matching funds or something.
And with the auditor's report, the fund balance did grow again this last year. So that's why, as a committee,
We thought we could afford to do it this way this year. Again, as you know, we're always try to be as frugal as possible with the monies.
and there are some other efficiencies that we should,
And there, we're
Be
looking
looking
at
at-
some other opportunities we can save money, you know, just putting new lighting in the building, our new system in the building, we've saved money. I mean, there's numerous things we've done this last year, and I don't think it hasn't all come up where, how much have we really saved, you know, cause it just started. We haven't had a full year with the new,
It would have been, we
Everything
should
new.
have probably been signed up with some auditor, somebody that could track that and really give us the numbers. I think we're saving, and we are.
oh, it is getting UNESCO tracks.
Okay, so that'll be nice to see.
after a year, it'd be nice to see what we've saved. And that may make a big difference next year, we may be able to do the same. But we just wanna make sure everybody's on the same page with us as far as allowing us to, well, we have to vote on it, obviously, as a board, to lower it.
And we'll vote on the 21st, but we didn't want any surprises at that meeting.
Do you have any other questions, Michael, Jerry?
No, as long as, there's sufficient funds to keep everything moving forward, I would be in favor of the lower rate.
Yeah, the same here.
Gene, you have any?
I think if we could do lower it, that'd be good, but my concern was, if it doesn't work out, then we gotta raise it. Well, the people understand that we did lower it, and so if we're raising it, they say, how come so much?
Right.
Well, it's only from this amount that we're raising it that much, not from where we were, so that's a concern I have too, because we want to make sure we have enough funds, as long as our balance is good. I think we should be able to lower it.
And if we have to increase it next year, we may have to only maybe have baby steps.
Yeah.
Type of thing instead of too drastic. Maybe you have any?
Okay. So now, at this point, you've kind of seen the whole process. Do you, public comment, are there any questions, concerns, comments you'd like to make?
That'd be first Dennis.
Well, I agree with all this, and I own a farm outside of town, and that was perfect. And then the house on the farm is classified different. Maybe you want to take somebody that know what they're reading can take a look at that, because the taxes rate 443% this year.
I just that one piece.
Yeah. And the rest of my farm and all that is looking like at 1.4% raise and all that, and 2% and 3%. That you expect.
And again, that'll adjust a little bit once this is in writing, because this is proposed.
Yeah, right. This is
So that'll adjust a little bit there, but that one
yeah. That's
caused
what my
that one.
question
Yeah.
is. Why? What's the market value is identical to the year before, or within $1,000. They vary a little bit, but the raise is 443%. That seems a little high raise.
No change.
That seems weird to me. That's why I'm here.
No, I would probably question that. I know we had
Yeah,
one.
I would definitely question that. I would
If
Have
you
you
call
talked to the county?
If you call up to the county and talk to Shar Miners,
Sean Myers.
It's on the back,
Sure.
isn't it?
Shar
Is that her?
Miners.
Is it on the back?
725-5803.
You want
Well,
to
this-
write
this
that down,
is-
Fran, on there for him?
Yes, would you do that? Because my memory's
do you
about
mind
this
if I
long.
write
That's
on
in
this?
pencil,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, right.
5803
Fine.
is the,
But when you get a jump like that,
Oh, yeah.
443% raise.
I was gonna say, did you build a new house? But evidently
No.
not.
It's
No,
still-
because the school levy only should have, even proposed, should have looked like a 20% raise, and
Yeah.
not,
It went from
Is our
$14
schools on
to
there?
$600 for the
Yeah.
school.
Really, for the school?
yeah.
Is that Fillmore County?
No. Dolly's. Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. I don't have any land in Fillmore County. But, so
Yeah,
I
I
should
would-
call him and.
Yeah.
Call
Yeah.
Shar.
It wouldn't be on our part, like we were just explaining.
Right, yeah.
Ours,
this-
and once the final goes through, it should be lower,
Yeah.
but.
And I could explain the 20% and say
Oh.
that that's what we're ratcheting down, but
Yeah.
400 I can't explain.
You can't, yeah, that's what I kind of figured, well, you're supposed to come here and.
No, it's a
So
good
that's
thing
why
you
I'm
did.
here and find out what to do, but
Yeah.
Shar will be
my
able to.
rest of my farm is 1-2% raise. I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that. I wish you'd raise the
Well,
corn.
most of the levy is just on the home property, on the farm, the land doesn't get the same.
Right.
It's hardly
Yeah.
gets any.
Right,
But-
it's house and 1 acre.
House in 1
Yeah,
acre, so,
house
but it
in-
wouldn't be that much.
No, that's,
Yeah, that's.
it's kind of a little bit above board, I thought,
Oh,
to
yeah.
raise
Oh,
it
yeah, that is.
400% in 1
Yeah.
year, so.
Yes,
So, okay, well, that was my big complaint, and
No,
I'm
no,
glad
no.
you answered it for me, and like I say, I got the rest of the farm, I got a house in town, I didn't have no problems with any of them. They were all where I thought, yeah, little bit raise, you gotta do that, 'cause that's normal, but when you jump 440%, kinda shook
when
me
you
up a
find
little.
out.
that's understandable.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Give me the
Dennis,
answer,
when you
and
find
I
it-
will contact you.
Hey, Dennis?
Dennis, when you
Yeah.
find out, we'd be interested in knowing what that was about.
You
It's
would be.
gotta be an
Yeah.
error.
Boy, I would be interested too, but I was told it's probably done by a computer and they don't make no mistakes.
All right.
What the entry does.
Shar will be able to look in every
Line.
law that's used in there, and she'll be able to tell you what caused the
Yeah.
increase.
Yeah, she's very good.
So,
Yeah, I just needed an answer, so
Okay.
because I thought,
well, by law, it says you gotta come here first anyway,
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
that's weird, you know. I
yeah.
So tell Shar you
Yeah.
came here first and
Yeah.
we told you to call her.
Yeah.
And I gave you the number. She'll
You
remember me. Yeah.
okay.
I'm in somewhat the same position. One parcel, the school tax portion goes up 28%. The other parcel goes up 43%. And those are the only two. But the valuations, which is all I can go by, I don't know what our use classification is, but the valuations, the one that went up 28%, the valuation did go up 2.5, and so I would have expected 2.5, across the board. And so when I saw 43, or 28, excuse me, I thought I better bring that up.
No.
Well, with the proposed, what we approved in September was going to be, an increase of 23%. And so,
That's proposed.
That was
Now,
just a
that will change, that was before this.
and that's just because once you set your proposed, you can't go above that.
Yeah, you
And
can
so
play the
we
game
were-
and go down,
we're
but you
waiting
can't.
to see
Right.
what happened with some other things, and then, now, when we set the final, that's when we're talking about, instead of having that 23%, having the negative 4.1%. So it brings it down. So I'm not sure where 28 came from, because it should have been 23.
Well, I took last year's and the difference and did the percentage on the smaller amount math-wise, and it came out to 28, so.
Okay,
And like I said, then I had some other things happen which weren't your control. But I had some land annexed, but it had the same evaluation as it did last year. And, but that one went up 43% school-wise.
oh, but it was annexed land?
But I paid as if it was last year already for 17. The 17 rate, let's see here.
But there's different, with school taxes, there's different land, usage, and it's taxed at different rates. And so if it was, the old land that you had was one classification and annexed and became a different classification, then it would get taxed at a different rate.
But then shouldn't it have been taxed at that rate last year, so I wouldn't be all excited this year?
So you could have been excited last year?
And I would have really been excited last year. I had enough excitement with that anyway, but it went up 43% from last year, and it was already annexed the first of last year. So it was supposedly in the city then.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It should have, yeah. And it should have been, like we said, it was a 23% proposed. So that's what you should have seen on there.
Sounds like another
So
shot.
it sounds like
That would have been another,
question on
that's
how she
another shot.
calculated it out.
Because there's so many formulas that go into how they figure that out. So they take our formula that shows 23%, but there might be other formulas that are changing in other areas. And there's no way for us to know that, but Shar would be able to tell you, should be able to tell you what is causing that increase and that difference.
Well, I would like you to lower the taxes instead, so I don't have to go through this crap.
Well,
Thank you.
we'll do it this time for you, Steve.
Yeah,
Don't ask.
yeah, just for me, right?
Don't ask next year. No.
but if, what I want you to also realize is, as we're looking at it and taking it down to that 0.566, even though that's a lower amount, if there's some formula that she's using and there's a different evaluation for that land, you might not see that 0.41 decrease in your taxes.
But the point is if I got this valuation here, whatever the darn formula is, it ought to be similar to last year's.
Yeah, it should be.
I mean, it ought to,
Yeah.
28 and 43% is a lot more than 21%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if
I mean,
you tax
that's-
23, you're looking at a 5%.
That's a pretty big margin of error.
Yeah,
That's,
well, not 400%.
no, but she likes Dennis better, so she.
Yeah. They must figure it all out, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean.
But anyway,
corn
that's
price
my
thing.
point. I'm wrestling with the same thing with this piece that got annexed into the city. That rate is,
And you're just looking at the school portion of that?
for you, yes.
Yeah, okay.
The percentage I get, their percentage is damn near the same, so, but that's a different argument. Next week, they get it.
Call ahead.
That's because I know the city is
Oh.
increasing taxes.
But my tax there shows up at 26% increase, and I got the story about, well, the valuations bounce up and down. I don't know, that seems like an awful lot to be paying for somebody else's valuation to go down and mine to stay the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody have any?
Thank you for coming.
Yep, thanks for coming in. So, we can, go into a closed meeting for negotiation strategy,
Yep.
correct?
Motion.
Good.
Second?
Second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Pete. And we'll just adjourn in there, correct?
We'll just adjourn in the closed session.